Hello, this is Stuart Roberts, founder of Haircuts for Homeless, and welcome to the Hear Me, See Me podcast. I'm going to be talking to people who are truly inspirational to me. Some you may have heard of, and some you haven't, but you really need to hear their story. Hello, this is Stuart from Hear Me, See Me podcast. This is quite interesting. Sorry, there's been a bit of a break. We haven't had any Hear Me, See Me podcast for a little while, and I think today's episode might explain it. I'm with a lovely gentleman today, Gary Hayes, who set up he set up the PTSD999 organisation, which we're going to hear about now, and then we're going to discuss it as a couple of nutters. But
never a truer word spoken.
Nice to meet you, Gary. How are you?
Very well, thanks. To yourself, mate?
Yeah. Polite, isn't it? You just go, yeah, fine.
Yeah.
Oh,
we're all struggling, but we'll just be polite for the moment. We'll relax a little bit. We get to it.
Yeah, let's start it. Let's start polite. Tell me about PTSD 999. Tell me about how it started and really what motivated you to start it.
So, I'm a former soldier, infantry soldier from back in the 80s. I then went into sort of close protection work. When I left the army, I got married to my wife. She had just started in the Met Police. And everyone kept saying to me, like, you've got to join the old bill. You've got all the attributes and everything else. And I just had no or very little interest. I had tried a few times to get into the police, the Met Police, Essex and Kent, but for some reason just wasn't getting past the paper sifts. I left the military with an exemplary record and just sort of cracked on. And then in 2003, a good friend of mine, he was a DS in the British Transport Police, and he just said, mate, we're recruiting and they're looking for people like you. And I said, if I had a penny for every time I'd heard that, I fucking wouldn't need to work at all. You know what I mean? It's that old cliche, so it's a blinder. But, okay, I filled the forms in. Within 3 months, I was actually in the job. I was actually starting my training as a very mature student. I was about 33 or 34, something like that.
Yeah.
So I went away and sort of got on with the training, which was, dare we say, my age, a whole new level of experience, for want of a better word. I would suggest myself in academia. I've never been really good friends. And it was tough getting through, learning all the law and the legislation and all the associated stuff that goes with the British Transport Police. But got into it. And I didn't give it any thought at the time. It's only now where we are currently today that I can look back on that and go, bloody hell, we was missing so much stuff in relation to mental health and well-being and how to deal with trauma. Because on the railway, unfortunately, I would suggest you're going to deal with at least 2 fatalities a week on the network somewhere. And if you're a response police officer, that could increase to 4 or 5, depending on what areas you're in. So it can be, on top of all the other stuff that police officers do, it can be a very traumatic form of work. Yet there was nothing back then that would suggest there were things in place to look after the mental health and well-being. If you went to fatality, when I sort of started, you'd have a duty governor would invariably come out to the job. If you was first on scene, you would basically be the OIC of the job, and you would determine whether it's a suspicious or non-suspicious job, i.e. if the person had taken their own life by suicide or they're pushed or there was other elements involved to, bring us to that final point that the person was under the train. They come out and they'll just give you a very quick debrief, and that was it, and you just moved on to your next job. And I'll never forget the first one I went to. It was nothing like the input that I'd had. We sat through, dare I say it, the old classic BBC information film of some kids playing football near a railway track. Trains come in, ball goes over the fence. Kids look at each other. Kid goes over the fence. Train's coming, and the ball's laying in the what we call the 4-foot, which is the space in between the running rails of the track. And then the kids scream, and then the train's gone, and there's just a training shoe and a ball. No kid. And you're like, fucking hell, I wish that was all that easy and very clean. But when you turn up for your first one, it's nothing like that whatsoever. And it's awful. And the bottom line is that there's nowhere for you to go and decompress from what you've just experienced. The sad thing with that is that will live with you forever. And I still remember my first one. It was a young Asian lady. And she was still alive. And I got under the train with her. It was a tube job. And the fire brigade turned up. And I think it was quite apparent that I was quite new, albeit I was very old. I was on my new shiny kit, and the firefighters turned up, and we had a bit of a laugh. And the next thing, I'm basically being directed under the train. Again, never experienced that before. And yeah, you know, she was still alive. You're saying stuff because you don't know what else to say. And you're talking to her, and you just, as you try and remove her from the working parts of the train, the life just sort of ebbed away from her, and you're left with that moment of, bloody hell, was that my fault? Could I have done anything better? And then the dark humour creeps in from the other guys because they're more experienced at it. And the next thing I know, I'm dealing with a robbery. It's as quick as that. You know, no time to really take on board what I've just been involved with. The next job that I went to, of a sort of similar sort of standing, I just got on with it because I'd done it for the first time, and now this was now going to be, unfortunately, the bread and butter of my working career within the police.
Wow, it's like the thought that you can go through something like that and then not, like you say, have that time to decompress. You know, to then, you just got to go to the next one.
Yeah, it's difficult because, you know, when you look back at, especially when I was in, we still had canteens in the police stations. The fighters could go back to their fire station. They could sit around the table, have a brew, because they're waiting for the next job to come in. Whereas for us, at that time, I wasn't a response driver. So it was realistically, get me notes done. Somebody would then go and deliver the death message. But as I was later to find out, as soon as I sort of qualified as a response driver, you would do virtually everything because there simply wasn't enough of us. So 1 minute you're dealing with someone who's potentially alive or with life-changing injuries, they then die. You take them to the mortuary, put them in the mortuary, do all the associated bits and pieces, paperwork, etc., update the system, and then you go and knock on the door, which isn't the best sort of practice because you've just dealt with that family's loved one. And they're going to ask you some very difficult questions. And again, I would suggest that we weren't trained to deal with that. You know, you always see on the telly, don't you, or in films, coppers turn up at a property, they got their hats on and the tyres are up and, you know, they're doing the right thing. And they come out of a load of old blah. But again, it's worlds away from the reality of it. And the reaction you got from the family members of the deceased person varied from job to job. Some expected it, some complete shock, others attacked you, you know, because it's your fault that they're dead.
Yeah.
You know, and then you get the awkward questions. Did it hurt?
Yeah.
What happened? And you can't relay those facts because you weren't there at the time. You was there at the aftermath of it. So it's just more trauma that you've got to take on board, and the expectation is that you'll just get on and deal with it and go and do your next job. You know, it's a funny old game, as they would say in the old footballing world.
Surely it would be better if someone else was briefed and they delivered the message, because they could then be disassociated. They could actually be stronger with it. because you've made that, I mean, the most personal connection ever. I thought what I did was personal, but that's, like I'm thinking about the young girl, your first one, and, you went through such a personal, like you comforted her at the end of her life. And then if you'd have then had to go to see the family, it's
I mean,
cruel in a way, and it's like cruel to make you do that.
yeah, it is. And then there's that other side of the coin that says, well, it's your job. Now, in relation to that first lady that I dealt with, I didn't have any dealings with the family then because I wasn't the response driver. I met the family at coroner's court, which again is the highest court in the land, and you're sitting in there, and the family want answers to why their loved one has died. And you're sitting alongside the train driver who couldn't stop, who couldn't turn left or right, and that family want answers to why that train killed their family member. And it's soul destroying, and you have to stand up and give your evidence. And the thing with the coroner's court is that the coroners are brilliant. The ones that I've worked with anyway, they were amazing. They just guide you through that statement process so it doesn't become too intrusive. You're giving the facts, but in a, I don't know what the right way to describe it would be, in a less traumatic sort of style, and that's that. But we had a job a few years ago at Ilford. It was near Christmas, and it was ironically, myself and my colleague, we were just leaving the station. We had our vehicle parked out the front of the station, and it just come over the tannoy that there was an incident on the island platform opposite where we were. So we went over there, and what it was some old girl had just fallen down the last couple of steps, and she just sort of gone over her ankle, and it was classed as a station accident. And the station supervisor was there, and he was like, "Don't worry, girl, she's just missed the last steps, blah, blah, blah." Okay, we were talking to her, and she was a proper old East End girl.
Yeah.
Fucking Germans never got me, and the Germans, she was effing and cheffing, and it was just so funny. And it was just like almost a week before Christmas. Yeah. And we're having a laugh with this old girl, and she's throwing a few fucks into us, which was quite funny, but in a nice sort of way. And she promised that she was going to come back with some biscuits for us for Christmas and all that, But this fella comes over, all suited and booted, and as we're dealing with the old girl, he says to me, "I just want to say thanks, mate, for everything that you and your colleagues do." And to be quite honest with you, because you get very little of that, I've sort of still concentrating on the old girl. And I said, "Yeah, cheers, mate, thanks a lot." And he sort of was stood by my side, and he went, "No, seriously," he says, "I'd like to shake your hand. I just want to say thanks very much." So I thought, all right. So I stood up, looked him in the face, and just said, "Mate, that's really kind of you. Merry Christmas. Get home safe and enjoy your Christmas." And he went, "Yeah, thanks very much." And as I say, a very well presented man. Wasn't in alcohol or anything. Couldn't smell nothing like that on him. Not that I had reason to. And we picked the old girl up, put her on the bench. The station supervisor called a taxi for her. Me and my mate walking up the steps towards the booking hall. And then we heard this almighty bang. And we just looked at each other and was like, really? And then one of our probationary officers come running up and he's got to me, Sarge, I think someone's just been hit by a train." And as I turned around to look down the stairwell, going back onto where we'd just come from, unfortunately, yes, someone had been hit by a train. I went to the platform, straight in the supervisor's office, got the CCTV, and it was a gentleman that just shook my hand. Yeah. And again, once we'd established who this fellow was, it was a non-suspicious death in relation to he had waited for that train and there was no one near him, and he unfortunately, took his own life. But I had to go to his house in Brentwood, and they lived in this gated community, and I'll never forget it because the security guard on the gate was a little bit perturbed as to why a marked police car was turning up. So I explained I need to go to this address, so he let me in. And before I banged on the door, I just thought, right, compose yourself, because this had been one too many grief messages, death messages that I've delivered, and I've sort of had an inkling of what I might receive. And again, it's like the week before Christmas, not a good time. Banged on the door, and dare I say, I heard, these footsteps running up the hallway. Mum, Dad's home. And you just think to yourself, oh, fuck, I don't want this. And the young kid opened the door, and he just stood and looked at me. And I'm looking down at this little fella, and it was that classic scenario of he was about the same age as my oldest boy at the time. Then his little brothers come up, who was about the same age as my middle boy. And then their little sister, she sort of staggered up the hallway, who was about the same age as my youngest boy. And this lad looked at me and he just went to me, "Where's my fucking dad?" And that just took my breath away, because I was not expecting that from this little fella, because I judged the book by its cover, gated community, lovely big house, and I was just like, oh, bloody hell. That's given me a moment of like, right, get yourself together now. And I was like, can I speak to your mum? And he went, "Where's my fucking dad?" And I'm like, I really need to speak to mum. And then mum put her head round the doorway. And whilst I was engaged in this conversation with a lad, I'd looked up on the wall and I'd seen a family photograph identifying the bloke who we were dealing with. So I was assured or reassured that this was obviously the correct address. And I went in on mum's invite, and she sent the kids down into the kitchen, and I'm in the front room with her. And I think she knew what was coming. We sort of arranged to get some neighbours to come in before some family turned up. And she said to me, "Can you go and tell the kids?" And again, it's a whole new experience, because I sort of have never ever spoken to children about something as tragic as I was about to deliver to them. And you just, how do you deal with it? I don't know. So off you go, dare I say, into the kitchen. And given my experience as a young rifleman with the old Royal Green Jackets back in the day, we was always sort of taught, and everyone knows us as like the thinking rifleman. Well, this was the time to be that thinking rifleman, and I had to stand on my feet and think hard and quick. And, I sort of spoke to the kids, hope that the message was gotten, but in a nicest sort of way, if that was at all possible. And I found it really hard not to break down in floods of tears. Just given, the time of the year it was, and the kids, and my sort of view of them being sort of the ages of my children. And it's like, fuck, how could you leave these kids with that terrible, terrible news? But, I was sort of, as I'm walking up the hallway, and mum was with neighbours now and family members about to turn up. She said to me, "Can you go and tell his mum? She lives around the corner." And I'm just like, I'm struggling.
Yeah.
I'm really struggling with this. And as I turn around, the little girl, she's going, "Mr. Policeman, Mr. Policeman." And the eldest boy told me, or asked me, where the fuck's me dad? He'd gone all polite, and he went, "It's Gary." So she's gone, "Gary," and she'd give me a little Christmas card, bless her. She just literally, whilst I've been telling her about her poor dad, she'd gone away, come and draw me a little Christmas card, bless her. And she said, "Merry Christmas and thank you." And you just sort of like, how resilient are kids? You know what I mean? And then I went round to his mum's, which was round the corner. And I must admit, I just sat in my police car for a couple of minutes. And I had a cry. I had to get it out of my system, because that really done me.
Yeah.
And before I went to knock on the door, the window from this house flew open in the upstairs, and this voice just shouted out. She called me the old C word. I don't know if that's appropriate for your podcast with
I've had worse.
She let me have it through the window. She's bosh. So I was like, okay, deep breath. I went to knock on the door. The door's open. She flew at me like an exocet, punched me square in the chest. Now, I'm a bit of a fat old knacker now, but I was a bit lighter back in the day. with my kit on, she actually rocked me back on my heels with the force of the punch, and she tore into me. It was my fault. Her son had died. You know, I'd killed him because we'd not listened to the messages that we'd sent to the police because of his ill health and blah, blah, blah. And then she slammed the door on me. All of a sudden, I'm very aware of all the neighbours now coming out, looking and wondering what's going on. And again, you're sort of like, how do I conclude this? And all I did was got on my knees up in the letterbox and just put my mouth to it. And I went, look, I'm really sorry for your loss. And your daughter-in-law's got me details. Should you need me? And I got back in the car, now trying to pull my shit together because the kids had just done me with a bloody Christmas card. Mum's just ruined my Christmas now because I'm thinking, did I kill him? Was it my fault? Well, clearly it's not, but guilt plays a massive part in PTSD, which I was only later to find out as we go through life. And I got on the radio and just said, look, can you now show me clear of this job? Last death message delivered. And they went, oh, brilliant, thanks a lot. Can you go back to Romford on an I-grade call, so it's a blue light call? There's an individual jumped the gate line without a ticket, causing a disturbance. So I've just dealt with all that nonsense, and now I've got to go and deal with an idiot who's not bought a ticket. So, of course, when I got to Romford, that idiot bought a ticket, and I see him every now and again, and he always makes a point of, if I'm in the station, and I've been out of the job 10 years now, he'll always show me his ticket. So he got the good news that night, and he's now an upstanding member of the public. But, yeah, you just, there's no recourse in relation to looking after you as an individual within the job. It's getting a little bit better, but there's loads of room for improvement.
Yeah. So what measures have been made? Why has it got better? In what respects?
I think in some forces it's got better. In others, there's still very little, if nothing, being done. And that's unfortunately mirrored in both the fire service and the ambulance service. When we look outside of the blue light box, prison service, RNLI, search and rescue, PTSD and mental health and mental well-being, it's like anything, isn't it? It goes through that tick in the box phase.
Yeah.
All of a sudden it becomes, we've had a few officers go sick with mental health issues. We've lost officers to suicide because of their mental health. And everyone's looking for that somewhere where they can brush it under the carpet scenario.
Yeah.
But PTSD it's like your own physical health. PTSD and your mental health are just as important. And when you've got PTSD, it's a brain injury. So it's an injury on duty. And people are very reluctant to acknowledge that within the services because of, let's face it, all those that have been diagnosed with PTSD, you think of the claims that could go in, the old classic where there's blame, there's a claim scenario. So, you join the police or any part of the emergency services, and I think that it's just that simple adage of, yes, you will be dealing with trauma, but you never know how much trauma. So therefore, I feel that the weight of responsibility is always more erred on the side of the officer than it is on the force that you're representing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You have, every year you'll have an annual refresher training course in first aid, officer safety training, taser, as I would like, taser officer or whatever. But there's nothing ever done about mental health and awareness. And it wasn't until I got involved in something much later in my service, off duty, which was a cardinal sin because you never got involved in anything off duty because it always ended up as a big bag of dog shit, really. And as a consequence of my actions on that day, sort of saving 2 young coppers and a complainant, I ended up being done for an ABH. I ended up in Crown Court. And if it wasn't for the Crown Court judge very much being on my side and being very aware of how debilitating PTSD is, I would have ended up with a custodial sentence. But the judge, prior to sentencing, And would you believe, again, this happened a week before Christmas in 2013. He said to basically my lot, I'm going to be sent away for a sort of a clinical evaluation because he knew if I went to prison, I wouldn't get the assistance that I needed. And he sent me to see the top forensic shrink in the country at the time. I was with him for 3.5, 4 hours. Didn't get to see the report there and then. I didn't get to see it until we went back for sentencing in January of 2014. And the conclusive lines in that report was quite simple, that my actions on the day were a result of my having PTSD that hadn't been dealt with, completely out of character, you know, and it was a result of my dealing with fatalities on the railway per se nearly every day, you know, with no help. I look back on that now and go, well, you know, we missed the boat in some senses because in police custodies, in a lot of custodies, there was a nurse who was there for your detained person because clearly, irrespective of the offence a person commits or committed, you're only taken into custody on suspicion of committing that offence, and you've got a duty of care towards them, and I get that and understand that. So if there's any injuries during the arrest phase, or if there's any pre-existing injuries that might slow down the process, the nurse is there to evaluate, and if need be, you know, you go up to A&E and whatever, but they're not there for you.
No.
And you just go away and do your notes, get prepared for an interview, or if you're not doing an interview, hand over your notes and go out and get another job. And it's just that hamster wheel that continually turns over. But during that process, remember, you're not offloading any of the trauma that you've dealt with. And in one shift, I think 3 fatalities in one shift. You know, and it's just a case of you come home, and for me, I just turned to drink. I was just drinking to stop my nightmares and my flashbacks. You know, I was an absolute pig to my wife and my kids, but I didn't realise I was being like that. And, you know, I got to a stage when I ended up sort of going off tangent a little bit now, losing my job, having been found guilty of the offence. I had to resign from a job that I loved, and I'd just done 11 years, you know, of the most amazing work. A job that, you know, I never had a day sick.
Yeah.
Wasn't because I was job pissed. I just really enjoyed the challenge of the job. The only time I was ever off frontline duties is if I've been injured, which, you know, football duties, you're always going to get in a scuffle.
Yeah.
And that was it. I had my nose broke during a scuffle with the old Millwall fans, bless them.
I've been with Stan Millwall. It's colourful, wasn't it?
You know, it was a great time, and it was just part of the game. But again, that's a little bit more trauma when you look at it. That, you know, we're roughy tufty, and we turn up on a Saturday and we'll have a punch up, and it's, you know, someone's going to get nicked, and, you know, whatever. And the following week you'll see them again, and there'll be a bit of banter, but you have to draw the line, you know, and then unknowingly you're going home with a different sort of trauma.
Yeah.
It's not dealing with dead bodies or bits of bodies or whatever. It's that physicality that you've been assaulted and threatened and spat at and things thrown at you and whatever, you know. And, you know, we used to brush it off, but you get home and in the confines of your own house, it all sort of starts creeping at you because you're not as young as you used to be. You're not as agile as you used to be. This face definitely didn't duck as many times as I should have done. But, you know, it's all that sort of impacts on you. Yet you carry on and you go to work. And I got to a point where, as I say, when I lost my job, I had to resign. I was broken, absolutely broken. And lots of stuff had happened into the build-up, and we can talk about that if you want. But I got to the stage where I went to take my own life. I just simply got up one morning. I've been at the job for about 2 weeks, I think it was. And the realisation was that I was unemployed. Who's going to employ someone with a criminal record? especially a copper or a former copper. And I never contemplated suicide because I dealt with too many in my time as a transport police officer. And, I was really down and I was broken. But I got up this one morning, took my kids to school. My wife was still a serving police officer with the Met Police. And I dropped the kids off and I got in my car and it was as if a light bulb moment come on. And I was like, fuck it.
Yeah.
I don't need to be here anymore. I'm an embarrassment. I've caused everyone so much grief. And I'll go to a place now where I know it works because I picked up loads of bits of bodies from there. And sure enough, I just drove to this place. I knew where to get in and sat on the embankment, just waited for that fast train to come out of Liverpool Street. And I can honestly say for the first time in a number of years, when I saw the train coming, it's a weird thing to say, I actually felt quite happy, quite comfortable, knowing that it was all going to be over. And for me, the sort of bloke that I was then, or prior to that, I'd never thought I'd even think about doing something like that, let alone talk about it now and tell people when we give our presentations about that period. The train was nearly upon me and I stood up, and every time I dealt with a suicide on the railway, I always felt so sorry for the driver. But you know what? At this point, I didn't even care about the driver. I could see him looking at me, and all I had to do was stand up, which I did, and take half a pace forward, and that was index, finished. But for whatever reason, I sort of fell backwards and then ended up on my arse. And if I remember correctly, he serves me right, I think I fell in some fox shit and it really stunk. And I was sort of sitting there crying and laughing, crying at the fact that I couldn't go through with what I'd done, then laughing that I was sitting in a load of fresh fox shit and it fucking stunk.
I think
So I got in my car, I mean, how silly is this? It's that thing of, I'm almost ending my life. Everything's going to be good because I'm no longer here being a pain for everyone. And now I'm worried about putting fox shit in my car.
Yeah.
And I'll sort of find some tissue paper, put it on my car seat. I've had another cry, drove home. The old lady opened the door to me and she was like, what on earth's the matter with you? And I just told her what I just tried to do. So more tears, got in, derobed because I was really stinking of fox shit then. I was thinking, I'm going to be visited by the local feral foxes tonight. And then it was at that point where I was just sort of like, this ain't good. I've never felt this low. And if I could use a phrase, I was lower than a bollocks on a worm at that point in my life. I was low. Sort of try to turn things around a little bit, try to beat myself up, because in my eyes then it was about I'd been weak, I'd let myself down, take away the equation of letting everyone else down and all the complex feelings of guilt and whatever else. And I ended up phoning a mate of mine up who was an ex-paratrooper. He was a captain in a parachute regiment, and we had a bit of a chat, and I just sort of said, look, we need to do something. You've got some contacts. Let's do something. Let's do something that's appropriate and it's going to work. And out of that came PTSD999. And it was really sort of set up as a bit of a social media thing where, we put ourselves out there and people, if they needed to have a chat, we were the right people to come to because both myself and the other co-founder, Simon, were chronic complex sufferers of the condition. So we understood it. We're not clinicians, we're not doctors, but we had a set of ear rolls that were capable of listening. And we weren't going to blow smoke up anyone's chuff because we understood it, because we'd been there, dare I say, we got the T-shirt. And it just developed, it grew legs, and then we needed to get involved with a trauma-focused clinical team. So we sort of sourced some of the best sort of trauma-focused therapists there were at the time. and we started that treatment process. And right at the beginning, when we started talking, we spoke about the lack of help out there. Well, we was able, realistically, within no more than 4 to 6 weeks of someone coming to us, we were able to get them a trauma-focused assessment and then starting treatment, whatever it was that they needed thereafter. So it was amazing.
Yeah.
But then COVID come along, and it sort of kicked it in the nuts a little bit. So we lost all of that ability. But I'm hoping as we move forward now, and we're very close to becoming a full charitable organisation. We're literally waiting for for Companies House to sign off some documentation that will then go up to the Charities Commission, and then we'll get that golden ticket, and then hopefully we can reinvent the wheel and continue to get people treated not as quick as it was before, because the private sector now is just overwhelmed as much as anyone else. But at least we can get that process going again.
That's incredible. It's a difficult process, isn't it? The getting a registered charity. We really had to work hard to get it for Haircuts for Homeless. You know, it does change. It's a game changer, because then you're not just a community group. You're a registered charity that people take more seriously, and it opens doors to different. Not that we've got me open at the moment, but different doors to funding and There's a lot more shut than open at the moment, but then that's another sign of the times. You know that all charities are struggling for funds and stuff like that at the moment. But the key to this is, I'm 18 next month. I'm 18 years sober, and how you stay sober, it's one alcoholic helping another.
Yeah,
and it's the same principle. It's one PTSD sufferer helping another, and like just sitting listening to you, like it was like fireworks going off in my head. Like how related to so many different things, and we've got a totally different life. I mean, you're rough, tough. I'm an hairdresser, so it's it's poles apart, right? But
listen, that comes with its own challenges, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know it does. Trust me, it does. But you thought you'd seen something at Millwall. You wait to see a woman who done like how you've done her hair, mate. That's incredible. but it's pinging off like light bulbs as you was talking. And the thing is that you not knowing what you're suffering from. I think that's the thing. Is that I've had a label put on mine now, and I've got PTSD because they've said, let's go into that. Yeah, they've said to me that I had a bit of a crisis last year, about July, and went to the doctor and done all these things and that, and they, then I've had assessments, and they said, right, you need PTSD therapy, right? Great, let's move forward, right, and you'll get a letter. Well, the letter come about a week later, and it said you should be seen in about 52 weeks. Now, I had this before once, because I had another crisis about 2018. I lost my business of 30 years.
Wow.
Which is nothing like compared to what some people have to go through. But for me at the time, my world fell apart. And I remember I've said this a lot, I was going off to, lucky enough, I'd already strongly started Haircuts for Homeless. And even though the business was imploding and we had to deal with creditors and all these things, I was still going out doing my work, my volunteering, and it was just after Christmas. It's a peak time of year, isn't it? And it was. I was going off to Ipswich. I was doing it all on my own at that point, and it was a long old drive over to Ipswich, and I was feeling so bad. I thought everything's gone. I've got nothing. All I kept thinking, I've got nothing, and there was a really strong chance we was going to lose our house. And I was thinking, like, it's sort of, I've worked all these years, and anyway, I'd done this session, and then there was this guy there, a young fella who happened to be about the same age as my boy. That's why I resonated when you said those kids was the same age as you. Yeah. That really takes you in there, doesn't it? Yeah. And, he was living in a tent, this kid, and he was explaining to me, it was bloody cold at the time, and he was saying that people don't understand, because you get in your tent of an evening, and then you zip it all up, and then all the where you're breathing, all the condensation forms on the thing, and then it's all dripping, and then it freezes. So you've basically got even an ice tomb in this thing.
Yeah.
This is explaining. Oh my God! And I thought, my kid's got a roof over their head. You know what I mean? And if we sell, we might have to downsize to a little house, or we might get a rent. You know, go into rented accommodation or something. We weren't facing the streets, and that filled me with so much gratitude. Like driving back to driving there, it done so much. So I'd been through that before. And then they said to me, "Yeah, you need help and all that." Because I was really
Yeah.
And I got a phone call about 6 months after the shop went, and by then we made the charity a registered charity, and we was doing it all over the country. And I was just driving somewhere at that day, and I got a phone call. She went, "Oh, it was Avery Mental Health or something."
Yeah.
Oh yeah. She went, "Oh, yeah, we've got your, you've got to be seen about your problems." I went, "Sorry?" I went, "That was 6 months ago."
Yeah.
And she said, "Yeah." I'd have took that now. That was 6 months ago. And I was a bit like, I went, "Well," I said, "I could be dead by now. You know, what's that?"
Yep.
I take it, don't need it then, and hang up on me.
Oh. No.
I swear to you. And I
Bloody hell.
we're done with all that. But then obviously, like, it hit the fan last year.
Yeah.
And they said 52 weeks. And then I had another, just after Christmas, it was hitting bad again. And I phoned again, and I was saying, "Look, I need help. I really need help at the moment." And it was, my wife was lucky enough; she was in, and she heard, I had it on loudspeaker.
Yeah.
And she heard the frustration of it all. Because sometimes she says, "Oh, you can't help yourself because you don't see it through. You don't bother ringing and all that." And she heard the frustration of being put from one person to another person to another person. And then we finally got through to someone who said they could help. But she said, "Look, the thing is," I said, "Well, look, does it mean that if it's 52 weeks, I'll be being seen in July time?" "Well, I can't really say that." I said, "What, might be before?" She went, "No." She said, we're actually dealing with some people from 2022. And it's 2024. So I said, "Oh, what? So it could be..." She went, "I'm afraid so, yeah." And I put the phone down, I looked at my wife, and we just looked at each other, and we just thought, and like, she was willing to say to him, like, and as you said, there's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm going up because I'm back to all the things
No.
brought in my mind. No. It was like, and when you said about you've been a pig to live with, I'm a pig to live with some of the time. I could be making it sound better, fucking all the time.
Yeah, that's the reality.
I just sort of polished it off a little bit there. Some of the time. Yeah. And I had one a couple of weeks ago, and I really try hard now. I try hard to control my temper and do these things. And this will make you laugh. I was in Basildon, and I was going for a pony, right? So I got caught short, and I saw a garage, and it had a Marks and Spencer's. Now, when you're on the road a lot, Marks and Spencer's always got a toilet. So
toilet, yeah.
Filled my car, my van of diesel, gone to the toilet, just about made it, like. And I reached for some toilet paper. Fucking ran out of toilet paper, innit? Oh, no, all I had was my hanky, right? So I've used my hanky, I put that in the disposal.
Oh, no.
Washed my hands. Oh, fuck, I had real hump, like, I was fuming, I was. Yeah. And I come out, and I was just queuing up, and some bloke come up to me, but I had the Haircuts for Homeless fan, I had the Haircuts for Homeless T-shirt on. We get stopped a lot, and people stop. We stopped at a garage again, and a lady would come out. A lady had a £10 note. She'd go, "We've seen your van. We want to donate."
Oh, how nice is that?
You get lovely, like, So he's come up to me. He's gone, you got the haircut van?" I went, "Oh yeah." He went, "You're blocking pump one. I want to make the mate." How I never hit him, I don't know. And I know. And I'm shouting at him, and I'm doing like everyone's looking. I'm probably on CCTV, like try and watch. But it was like, and then you get in the car, And then you've got to deal with it. I dealt with that all weekend. Like, all weekend, it's going over in my head. Like, I think I
Yeah,
could have just said to him, like, look, mate, sorry, like, yeah, I'm out of
yeah,
order. If I had told him what I'd just been through, he'd have understood, you know. But, like,
yeah.
it's these things that, but I think when you're carrying this around in you, you're just like, you're just an unexploded bomb.
You are, and you hit the nail right on there earlier on. You were sort of saying, you know, people don't get it. People don't get trauma, and people will never understand trauma because, as you and I are talking to each other now, we're two very specific individual people. Yeah, and that's what trauma is. It doesn't matter who you are, what color you are, what sex you are, what planet you're fucking from. If you've got enough trauma going on, it will materialize in the most unexpected way and the most unexpected time. Anger for me was a major issue. So for me, yeah, I could handle myself back in the day, not so sure now. However, football duties, for me, I knew that I could get involved in a punch up. Didn't matter where I was or if I was going off doing public order duties, I knew that I could just get rid of all that frustration on some stupid individual who was there for the same reason. And for me, it was game on because, you know, this is something that we try and break down the barriers and stigmas that we attach to our own mental health and well-being when we give our presentation. Doesn't matter what you do in life, whether you're out doing the hairdressing, it comes with its own specific trauma because vicarious PTSD, which you will get a lot of, i.e., you're listening to somebody else's trauma, you take that away, and it's like, well, thanks a lot. Where am I going to go with that now? You've listened to the horrible stories, the kid in the tent, dreadful. You want to try and help, so then you're going through this guilt complex. And it's very difficult for people to understand, unless they're struggling with mental health themselves. One of the biggest things that I've found since we've been out there delivering our presentation up and down the country is getting blokes to accept that they're not as rough and as tough as they feel they are, irrespective of the job they do in emergency services or where they've come from. At the end of the day, when you put your custodial hat back in your locker or your flat cap back in there or your fire hat or whatever it is, you go away, you're a human being again. And you've got a heart and emotions. And when I explain to people about my PTSD, I'm quite sure that the few hundred sort of fatalities I dealt with and other sort of incidents, stabbings and, you know, CPR on dead people and all the rest of the shenanigans, yes, it did have an impact on me. There's no doubt about that because I wouldn't be human otherwise. But my PTSD goes back to the stuff, and again, I don't know if Stu has mentioned this here, that I did during the aftermath of the London bombings in 2005. I got sent to the temporary mortuary to help identify the victims of the bombings. And whilst I was in there, the team I was working with were an amazing bunch of cops from up and down the country. A lot of them had just come back from dealing with the aftermath of I think it was a 2003 or 4 Boxing Day tsunami. So they'd been out, you know, picking dead kids out of trees that had been out there for months and stuff like that. So these were experienced people. This was my first time of dealing with something in that almost clinical sort of way. And it wasn't pleasant, but it was interesting in a bizarre sort of way. And we were doing our best to get these 52 victims of that, I don't even know how to explain it, that moment of stupidity, back to their loved ones. And one of my jobs was to take the deceased through to a family viewing area. And I basically cut myself off from all the media because I didn't want to know who the victims were. You can imagine that when we were dealing with them, some of them have been at the site they come from for 3 or 4 days. And if you remember back then, it was really hot. So decomposition along with the blast injuries, was quite graphic. And we never had the right infrastructure to look after the deceased people. So we had what we called pods, and within those pods, there were sort of fridges, but they were warmer than the fridge that you got in your kitchen, so they weren't ideal for keeping the deceased in there. And I just followed we had these booklets, they call DVI booklets, and we had a UK one and an Interpol one, and these booklets followed the deceased through from point of being collected at site, the location where they died, and all the information would be logged, and a set of numbers would accompany that victim. Now, prior to the bombings, my wife was heavily pregnant with our third son. I just joined our new all singing, all dancing anti-terrorism team, which was basically a good excuse to go about in big vehicles with black kit on, looking menacing and drinking lots of coffee. It was the ideal job. And my little fella was due on 7/7. Now, my wife had gone to work on both the due dates for my other two boys and actually gone into labour whilst at work, if my memory serves. Not good for her colleagues, but always good for a laugh. And off she went, and she had the boys. Thankfully, my youngest come a bit early. So going back to the mortuary, I'm taking this victim through to the family viewing area. And one of the civilian mortuary staff just said to me, "Oh, Sarge." Now, nobody used rank. It was always names and nicknames, because it was just that environment. First names, nicknames, whatever. And she went, "Oh, this is dreadful." And I'm just like, shit, something bad's going to come my way and I don't want to hear it. And I said, "Look, they're all bad." And I'm trying to take this person through on the gurney. And she went, "Oh, his dad's coming to view. Just lost his wife to cancer, and this is his only child." And I'm just like, how on earth did you manage to ascertain all that information? Is it true? And you just threw in my fucking day, because I didn't want to know none of that.
No.
Takes the young fella through to the viewing area. Had a chat with the FLO, which is like the family liaison officer, who's a specific officer trained to deal with situations like this and look after the families through this traumatic time. And I just sort of give them some general advice and said, "Look, I know that some families, because of their religious beliefs and whatever, they like to see the body, and some like to wash the body. I would suggest most of the victims weren't even had bodies." And I sort of said to him, if it's possible, try and keep the shroud in the place that it is. And you know what I'm saying. So like, yeah. About 10, 15 minutes later, he comes back. I'm just sort of hanging about in the corridor. And he went, "Gal, can you just, like, from Dad, thanks for everything, for looking after his boy. Can you thank the team and all that?" So I went, "Yeah." So I went back in the room. Dad had gone with the officer. And as I've done with everyone else, I sort of gathered up flowers and gifts and cards and whatever, and I was putting them in the body bag. But for some reason, I don't know why, I just caught sight of this bereavement card, and it done me. It still does me now. Just a few simple words on the card, but I related that to my new son. That poor fellow was going home to what I believe to be nothing, and I'm coming home to my new baby boy, and my other two boys, and the feeling of guilt that we spoke about earlier was just crushing, because in my eyes, prior to the event, we knew that something was going to happen, but we just couldn't time, date, or place it. And then my wife goes into labour, and I've got a new baby boy, and I'm over the moon. But then there's all this misery and destruction, not only for the 52 people that died, but for the hundreds and hundreds of people that were injured, and those that suffered life-changing injuries, and obviously the mental side of it as well. And my world stopped for that brief moment. I broke all the protocols that were in place. I left the body unattended. We was on a secure site, don't get me wrong. But I had to get away from that kid. And I went outside and, I was just beside myself. And I got my shit together, went back in. And that night, we was working anything between 12 to 14-hour days because of the pressure that was on the team. Excuse me, got a snotty nose now. The pressure that was on the team to get these people identified, because we was obviously the families wanted to know if their loved one was with us. And you can imagine, on top of the 52 victims, we had thousands of body parts as well that had to be dealt with and identified. And the process was very lengthy and very complex, but, we did our best. I remember coming home that night we was at the HAC at the top end of Liverpool Street, which is the Honourable Artillery Company. Now, ironically, when I'd come out of the regular army and I joined my TA regiment, stroke battalion, I was in the same regiment, and we used to use the HAC for training purposes. They had a massive playing field, and we used to go over there, run, and carry logs and all the silly things that you do as squaddies. And there I am now dealing with these poor victims of this atrocious act. And I got to Liverpool Street, and there was a group of builders, and atypical of every human being, and you just mentioned it about the old petrol station scenario, you would stop someone from doing what they did every day, stopped at that petrol pump, went about their own business without a care for anyone else. And I remember these geezers talking about how their days were fucked up because the old bill was shit, the fire brigade was shit, the ambulance service was shit, they couldn't get to work, they couldn't do this, they couldn't do that. And I'm thinking, in my own head, if you had spent a couple of seconds with me where I've just come from, you would change your point of view. I've been elbow deep in gunge and snot and just misery, and you're moaning because your train's 10 minutes fucking delayed.
Yeah.
And this geezer looked at me, and I was dressed in sort of like what we call half blue, so I had my working trousers and boots on, by the T-shirt on. And he's looked at me and he went, "Are you old Bill?" And I went off like a fucking rocket.
Yeah.
And dare I say, I put hands on and should never have done it. And I'm screaming at this geezer because I was so broken by what I'd just done that day. And all his mates are like, I thought they was going to give me a good shoeing. But they all just sort of stood there and were like, fucking hell. And I put this fella down and I said to him, "You've got no fucking idea." And I just sort of walked off thinking, someone somewhere would have had that on their phone. There'll be a complaint coming in and I'm in the shit. Anyway, just carried on doing what we did. And about a week and a half later, I'm walking back towards Liverpool Street Station, and it was a Friday. And I managed to get away a bit early doors. It was about 6:30 in the evening. And it was still nice and sunny. And there was these same builders. I recognised them straight away, outside a pub en route. And they're going, "Oi." And I looked over and I was like, giving me a nod. I went, "Oi, come over here." And I was like, "No, I'm going." I went, no, come over here." And the fella that I'd gripped up just come over to me. And he went, "Mate," he says, "I don't know what to say, but yeah." And he gave me a pint. And I was like, "That's really kind, mate, but I just want to go home." And he went, "Do me a favour, mate, just have a pint with us." So I ended up having a couple of pints with them. And they were just that thing of, because they didn't know and understand what had happened, because their day had been ruined in their eyes by, especially the old Bill, which we always took the blame for everything. And he was just like, "You really changed my mind." And I sometimes use that in my presentation, but one that I sort of use to a lot of people now is the analogy of, you imagine when you're going about your daily business and you hear, first of all, you might be in your car, you might be walking, you might be on public transport, you hear the sirens of an emergency vehicle, and then the traffic stops and you're sitting there waiting for this vehicle to make its way through, and, especially if it's a Friday night and it's an old bill car, you think, twat sell 8 for a kebab or whatever. You know, we never used to do that, never. But they could be going to a job that will change their lives forever. But at that moment, they don't know it.
No.
That has a massive impact on people now because they actually start thinking about it in that right context. You know, and it's, as I say, for me, there's always other issues that lead up to chronic complex post-traumatic stress, and especially childhood trauma. I was sexually abused as a kid by 2 different blokes. One was the old classic babysitter back in the 70s, and then the football coach, which was a big thing apparently back in the 70s. And, you know, last year, would you believe, well, this time last year, that football coach, after 47, 48 years post-incident, on not only myself but a number of other kids in the team, was given a custodial sentence, and he's in prison. So there's always something from the past that will build up and push the PTSD forward, and you know, and obviously that continued exposure to trauma, that it doesn't help. So when we give our presentations now, going back on that theme, we don't dress it up. We show and give the signs and symptoms and the impact that it has on not only the individual, but on the family members too, and the wider circle of emergency service workers, like your scenes of crimes officers.
Yeah.
People have to sit and view horrific videos of child abuse, acts of terrorism, you know, domestic abuse. The list goes on. And they're the forgotten people because no one understands, and we mentioned it earlier on, the vicarious side of life. When you're sat watching videos of people being beheaded or kids being raped or fatal car crashes or suicide on the railway, you're not physically there, but you're sat in front of that screen watching that incident happen. And you've got to make notes on it, you've got to build a case around it. And that's as bad as being on scene. But people, again, can't get that concept. Well, if you weren't there, how can it affect you? And remember, trauma can be anything. Now, for me, yeah, all the blood, snot and shit over the years hasn't helped, but a bereavement card that I linked straight away to my newborn son.
Yeah.
Fuck me and turned me into a monster.
Yeah.
You know, it's as simple and as debilitating as that. And, you know, we've both experienced it and we will experience it for the rest of our lives. But what we do is we learn to manage it to a degree. PTSD isn't curable yet. I doubt if it ever will be. But we're given certain techniques in how to deal with our PTSD and our triggers. Some people find it dead easy. I don't. I find it incredibly difficult. But in a very selfish way, I sort of deal with mine by way of giving our presentation. Yeah. Because I'm offloading that story again, which is just another little chip away from that, I don't know, that monument we're building, the PTSD. It's another little bit of dust to hit the floor to be swept away, and that's it, done. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I get that. I completely get that. Do you think if that bloke sees it, he might come up and buy me a pint because he realises that I'd had no toilet paper that?
I'm sure he must have gone in and found your shitty handkerchief. That would be a momentum, wouldn't it? To see him in the petrol station, he's going, "Oh, it is yours." Just go and buy you a box of man size. It's weird, isn't it, how people just deal with shit in a different way.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, again, I got a message just over the weekend from a gentleman from Scotland. I won't say what part of the service he's from up there, but we gave our presentation to this group of very specific individuals. And this chap, bless him, he broke down in floods of tears at the end of the presentation. And, you know, rightly so, we gave him plenty of time and we had a chat, and he's just kept me up to speed with his progress. It's now been acknowledged that the PTSD that he has is a result of the work that he'd been doing for 20 plus years. And he's been medically retired. And he sort of said in his message to me, if it hadn't been for you, and your colleague coming up and delivering that message in such a powerful way,
Yeah.
I'd have probably carried on struggling and probably end up where you was and would have gone and committed that final act. He says, but I know and understand now why I was the way that I was. I can't thank you enough, blah, blah. And it all gets a little bit mushy and whatever. But
Yeah.
I'm just like, the whole reason we set this up, and it's going to get cliche now, is because I didn't want anyone, and I don't want anyone to go through what I put my family through and what I did to my boys. I wasn't physically horrible or whatever to them. Just verbally, I was just wrong. And we use in our presentation parts of statements given from my oldest son, who was about 10 at the time, and my wife, and it's crushing.
Yeah.
But because it's not dressed up, it's read. These parts are read out by actors, and you watch the people's faces in the audience, just their chins just drop, and because nearly everyone in that room has probably gone through something similar.
Yeah.
And it's now that recognition that we've given them, because I get upset all the time about that bloody card thing, and it's something I'll try and deal with. And I was very conscious of it when we first started delivering our presentation to whoever we were delivering it to, that I was going to end up blowing snot bubbles and floods of tears, and I used to really worry. Now, if I can be quite blunt about it, I don't give a fuck, because it's real. And if it's going to make some old fat bloke up on the stage stand there and cry in front of 100+ people that he's never met before, well, when people say they want stuff to be real time, there it is. And if that's the thing that's going to knock on your door and go, he might have a good point there.
Yeah.
Take away the points we've delivered and shown them, and just make it work for them. Whatever it takes for you to understand and accept that you're struggling. You've been sober all these years now. Amazing. Absolutely brilliant. It's taken me a long, long time to realise that was one of my biggest problems.
Yeah.
It was the drink, because I needed it to try and get some sort of sleep, to stop me nightmares and me flashbacks, to block out her whining voice, because she was always on my ear rolls about whatever in my own mind's eye at the time.
Yeah.
And the kids moaning they wanted to do this, and you're never here, and well, let's blot it out with drink.
Yeah.
But you know yourself, mate, it's a vicious, vicious circle. You go to bed drunk, you get up drunk, you go to work drunk.
People can do it. People can do it, but you get to a point where I was, and you can't do it. And it's either that, if you don't change something, like I wouldn't still have a family. I probably would be dead. And it's not being dramatic, because I nearly died so many times in misadventure through being drunk, and I did attempt to take my own life once, and I haven't got this, not the excuse, but I haven't got that to say, it's because I drink. I'm 18 years sober and I don't have a thing. I don't have anything. I don't have fucking cherry trifle. So, because people are a bit ambiguous with sober sometimes. It's, I don't have anything. And, but so it's all, I can't blame Emily on that, but I'm still have all these things going on because I've got a root problem, which is this thing. And my perpetrator, was a word, he didn't go get banged up. He died, so he's long, But the damage still happens. And when you said about the presentations, I just recently done one for about 250 people at the Samaritans Eastern Region thing, and it was, but it's cathartic.
It really is,
mate. Like it's. It's powerful because it's raw. Like I'm very open and raw about my delivery of it, and no holds barred. And I opened up with when I phoned the Samaritans once. It was after the end of a 3-day bender of cocaine, but we'll go on to that later. And that sort of set the mood. And but and people were coming up to me after, and I think you're probably very much like me. It felt so uncomfortable because they're all coming up to me how lovely you are.
Yeah.
You think,
yeah. And it's an amazing thing, isn't it, Stewie? We gave a presentation. There must have been probably one of the biggest ones that we've done. 250, 300 odd people in this room, all cops, just bags and bags of experience and varying ranks. And I don't do pats on the back very well. I get very embarrassed and cringy and just like, I just want to fucking get my gear and fuck off.
Yeah.
And I looked up and there's all these people still clapping. And I'm like, yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks very much. Now I'm looking like probably the scenario of you trying to get into the cars at the petrol station. I'm busting to get out of there.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? And it's like I've got to do the walk of shame, but I can't because like they're all still clapping.
Yeah.
And I eventually like managed to get my kit together and got outside and was like, "Whoa, amazing!" And as I turned around to go to the little sort of brew area, get a cup of coffee, there's 300 people queued up waiting to shake my hand. I was like, "Oh no, this is absolute fucking misery." You know what I mean? I can't do it, but it's nice that I guess that through what you're doing. And what we're doing, that we're just enabling people, and I'm using words, fucking enabling people. I never thought I'd be using words like that, and reaching out and blah blah blah. But we're giving people that opportunity to look at itself, and it's all about being fluid and the whole shit. But if we're able for our own, dare we say, story, to just make people sit up and think about themselves in a different way and look at their friends and colleagues and their families in a different way, then surely that's a result. And that's all I look at. And again, this all sounds about blowing my own trumpet here, but I had a meeting 2 weeks ago. We deliver our presentation to our security services. And that all came about through someone in the Met's Anti-Terrorism Command. And we had this one-off meeting, and it was the very difficult thing of this individual had a newspaper around his face, so I couldn't see his face. And we're in one of the most secure places in London, and it was all very Pink Panther. I was expecting Inspector Clouseau to come up on the old parallel bars and just jump over the top and down the stairs and all that kit. It was honestly, mate, fucking hilarious. Well, before I'd finished the very brief 30 minutes of giving this hour-and-a-half presentation, this geezer's tapping me on the shoulder in absolute floods of tears, and he went, "Mate, I didn't see that coming one bit." And we've done 7 or 8 presentations for them now. We've got a further 3 to do this year. And I say, this meeting we had last couple of weeks ago, he said to me, "Just give you a quick brief on the last presentation and the feedback." So I went, "All right, yeah." And he gave me this sheet of paper. And again, bits blocked out and whatever else. So I'm going through, and the comments were amazing. And he said, "You realise that the score system that we have is 0 being 0, i.e. dog shit, you're useless, get out, don't come back, and 21 being the highest score." So I went, okay. As I'm sort of reading all these wonderful comments and, very humbling, and I'm looking at my lager getting a bit warm and my pizza getting a bit cold, and I'm sort of like, right. And the point is, and he went, "Well, look at the fucking score." He said, "No one's ever got that, ever." And now this guy's been part of our security system for 30 odd years.
Right.
And I looked down at the bottom and we got 21.
Wow.
And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly what I said. Wow. So I dived into my lager and threw my cold pizza down my neck and come away quite chuffed because, again, these are a specific group of people that do a very specific job and have a very specific trauma. Now, if we're giving them couple of basic tools, and you must get this all the time, Stu. Why didn't we know about you before now? Why didn't we hear about this? Why? Well, my excuse is I didn't go mad enough early enough to set this up and deliver it.
Yeah.
However, if we're getting people now to think outside the box, because all the presentations we give up and down the country to different forces or whatever, it's all word of mouth. We don't knock on anyone's door. I mean, I could do with a few people knocking on my door at the moment because it's horribly quiet and we've got no sort of money's coming in. However, that will change. But that's the nature of the game we're in.
Yeah.
But for me, and probably like yourself, when you sit down at the end of the day with a cup of coffee or a lemon tea or whatever it is that you drink now.
Just got my head.
And you,
So I drink lemon tea, mate.
I wouldn't even add that association.
Yorkshire tea.
yeah, proper man's brew. Going down to Dog and Duck for a pint afterwards, sort of thing. Yeah, but you know that you sat in that chair indoors and you can go, I've helped someone today.
Yeah,
and that's an amazing thing. I don't care who you are, what you do. You can sit down in the knowledge and comfort. We're not going to save everyone. We get that. And that's the reality of what we do. We know that, and it's a horrible thing to say because people are still taking their lives.
Yeah.
You know, cops, the suicide rate in the police service now has reached a whole new level, horrible high level. But same for the fire and ambulance service. I got a message on the 2nd of January. The police officer up north had taken his life. Hadn't even got through his 2 years probation. He was a young person.
Yeah.
Why? Why was that allowed to happen? So there is that part. We know we're not going to save everyone, but we're doing the best we can for everyone, if that makes sense.
Well, there's this minor addiction, like I'm just addicted to the good feeling because we're all selfish, if it's it's wonderful what you do. You're so unselfish. No, I'm selfish. If anything, I'm still selfish. I used to just pig out on drugs and drink. Now I pig out on helping people just because that's where I get my validation from. And I don't have, I get you get the lovely messages online and all that stuff. What I love is a big smelly hug from an homeless person. That's, what I mean? That's my. Look, I've got. It makes me hair stand up when me
hair stand up. Yeah, you've done me. Mine have got up there.
That's what it is. That's and you can't bottle that stuff. It's
Well, I mean, we got introduced to another organisation that I've known about, and I've bought bits of their kit over the years and had stuff bought for me. An organisation called Pilgrim Bandits. Now, this is an organisation set up by our special forces people, originally for guys that are injured on tours and doing whatever, and they've opened the doors up to make it quite a big thing now, helping veterans across the armed forces, and also quite inclusive of our Blue Light family. And I met the CEO last year at an event, and he was a former Sergeant Major of A Squadron of 22 SAS. And we had a lot of friends in common, a lot of my mates who had joined the regiment, served with Matt, and there was a lot of the old stories coming out, and it was hilarious. And, before we knew it, Matt had to get up and do a speech because the event we were at, the guys were raising money for pilgrims and for us. And Matt got up, and I'd only met him for about an hour and a half, but we'd shared so much shit, it was unbelievable. Before we'd had a beer, so it was all sensible and grown up sort of stuff with a bit of the old military banter thrown in and whatever. And Matt got up in front of about, it must have been easily 150, 160 people at this event, all black tie doing whatever. And he gave the most empowered speech. He was so passionate. And it honestly, it brought a lump to your throat, and it made you feel uber proud. That stand-up hairy moment was happening, and he then went, I'm going to hand you over to the co-founder of PTSD, Gary H, blah, blah. And I forgot that he had the mic in his hand. So as we were sort of crossing each other, I went, how the fuck am I going to beat that? And of course, it's come out on the speakers. Everyone's laughing. And he went and sat down. And I just said what I said and spoken very much as we've done now. Matter of fact, but from the heart. And people, when you're doing that, it's that understanding, isn't it? It's a level that people get. I mean, when you spoke about that young kid in the tent, I remember dealing with rough sleepers around Romford when I was policing around there, and the majority of them were veterans. And we sort of try and push them around to the Sally Army around the corner, and you just think, my goodness, how has this veteran ended up sleeping under a rat-pissed archway on the side of Romford Station with idiots throwing beer and shit over him? And it's heartbreaking.
It is.
But when you actually make people sit there and go, how many times have I walked past that person and done nothing?
Yeah.
Yet after you've given that story, they'll walk past and they might do something positive. They might give them a couple of quid for a brew or to do whatever they want to do with it.
Yeah.
But they're going to try and make a bit of a difference. Now, it's only come from your experience and your passion in delivering that story and raising that bit more of awareness around it. And, I'll tip my hat to you, mate. I really do, because without people like you and having gone through the experience that you have, clearly the amazing setup that you have now would never be where it is. A bit like all of us, I guess, we put our bad shit to the back of everything, and we're out there looking at everyone else, and that's a pat on the back. But yeah, mate, I mean, through adversity and all the rest of it, good stuff comes through, and long may it continue. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I found that when I spoke with Stuart a few years ago. Now it's listening to his story and him allowing me just to keep banging my gums until they sort of bled. We had a laugh and we had a cry, and I got in my car driving home. And again, it was just that thing of, thank Christ someone's listened.
Yeah, that's what I love about doing this. Like I've been in touch with so many different people doing this podcast. It's for me, really. Like, I don't give a fuck if no one listens to it.
But again, when I met
people, I wouldn't meet.
Yeah, and do you know what? I met a whole new set of friends when I met this Matt Hellier from Pilgrim Bandits last year. And there was a gentleman there in a wheelchair. I had no idea who he was. All I got told was he was a former firefighter. And I went to shake his hand, and he's looked at me. He went, "You taking a piss?" I went, "Nah." He went, "Do you know who I am?" I went, "Yeah, fucking firefighter in a wheelchair. That's as much as I know." He went, "Oh, right." He says, "No one's told you then." So he just got this most infectious grin, right? And when you think, fucking normally I might have just punched you square on the fucking nose, but you're already sitting down, so it's pointless. And then when he introduced himself, and then he told me he got MND, motor neuron disease, and I was like, oh, fuck. So I just leant forward, give him a kiss on the cheek, and he just pissed himself laughing. He says it works every time. And then his wife sort of lifted his arm up, and we shook hands, and he's still killing himself laughing. I said, "Do you want a beer?" And got him a quick beer, and then this Matt starts talking to us, and we've got this great conversation going on. Now, this firefighter, John, his name's John Chart, and he's in not a good place with his MND, but do you know what? His enthusiasm to encourage other people to look out for others and help others, it's infectious. And I've only known him, I don't know, 5-6 months. I feel as though I've known him all my life.
Yeah.
And he's such a character, and he's putting it out there about MND, and Pilgrim Bandits are really looking after him, and it's an incredible thing. And again, you just become part of this bigger family.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It does, yeah. It does. We've had it with we broach onto we bump into other people. So we work with obviously homeless centres, but now we work in women's refuges, victims of domestic violence. We work with a hell of a lot of ex-service people. Yeah. And we've teamed up with a couple of charities up north where if we can actually recommend them on to their services, so you end up in partnership with lots of different people and then get an understanding of what they're all doing as well, So it's
great. I mean, again, on the same sort of vein, we a chap we met last year for the first time. He runs an organisation called the Jordan Legacy, and it's all about his son who took his own life by suicide. And the irony of the manner of his son's death in relationship to when he finally got to the home address, and there was a couple of coppers outside just laughing and joking. Yeah. Now, this gentleman's parents had both been police officers. So he said he got the dark sort of sense of humour.
Yeah.
But when he introduced himself as being the dad of the deceased, the two cops, I don't know, took a different angle of it and stopped laughing and whatever, and then blah, blah, blah. Then somebody else came along from the old bill and went, "Oh, have you decided what undertakers you want?" There was no compassion, there was no empathy, there was diddly squat. And, you know, this guy went away and thought about it and thought, how many times had his mum and dad dealt with jobs like that and then come home to the family home and just got on with it, not giving detail to them as kids. And, you know, when he lost his son to suicide, you know, he just thought, again, as we've done, through something so painfully bad, you've made something, not going to say good, but you're on par with something that's going to reach people and hopefully prevent people from doing such acts, you know what I mean? And giving them something to work towards.
So before we wrap up, what about, so with PTSD 999, what's your goal now for the changes that you want to come about in the future? I know that you won't be able to change everything, but what would be the main ones?
So I think really to build on what we've got, I would love for us to be able to get back to getting people the treatment in a manner that we did before COVID, i.e. how quick it was to get that trauma-focused assessment, and then if they require treatment thereafter, to get that in place. I've got an amazing team of volunteers. So for, you know, the last 7 and a bit years, no one's been paid. I've since left my former employment to do this now on the go of our directors and our accountant and our solicitor. So I'm the only one who gets paid. I get very minimal sort of
I understand.
bit of dough coming in per month. It just covers the bills, which is fine because I don't. It sounds a bit arrogant. I need the money because I need to support my family, but I feel as if I'm taking away from what I shouldn't be taken away from. So eventually, I would like for us to be in a position where I can pay other people as well to assist us. And I think the ultimate game is just to keep the amazing people that I've got on board. Our president, Graham Cole, the actor from The Bill, he played Tony Stamp. Now, I've known Graham 30 years because I used to do all the firearm stuff on The Bill. So if you was ever to watch an old rerun from back in the early 90s and you see a young strapping lad with black hair and all his own teeth and quite slim with a gun, that'd be me. You know, and Danny Cotton, the former chief of or commissioner for London Fire Brigade, she's our vice president. Again, her own bag of trauma, the most amazing woman you could ever wish to meet, incredible in every sense, and an amazing leader. Dennis Stratton, another one of our ambassadors, patrons, former guitarist from Iron Maiden. In fact, I think he was the original guitarist for Iron Maiden. A great mate of mine. And wherever he goes, music videos, he's always either got one of our T-shirts on or our wristband, you know what I mean? As far as Andy McNabb, the old SAS guy, Bravo 20, he's an ambassador. And when he can, he spills the beans a little bit about us. And it's just raising that awareness. And I hope we can maintain that. I hope we can get some good, strong funding. And the bottom line is just to prevent families and individuals in our emergency services and other areas from going through what I put my family through. And that's my ultimate goal.
Well, I can relate to it. And you know, I can only wish you the best for it. What we'll do, obviously, we'll put all the links to everything you've got, which we'll have a chat after when I stop recording. But thank you so much for your time today. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. And,
anytime.
You know, it's like that same old thing you just said. I feel like I've known you for years, mate.
Likewise. And, do you know, honestly, mate, thank you so much for listening and for giving us the opportunity, because I'm sure you've got a massive following, to just make people aware of another organisation, soon to be a charity. We'll be out there with the begging bowls. And if you can donate and help, the money, every penny that comes into what we into our little organisation, Obviously, the sad part of it is it's a business, and we've got to maintain that and bills to pay, etc. But we reinvest that money into training emergency service workers and whoever needs it in mental health first aid courses. They're not cheap, and other sort of assist courses. So again, we're just breaking down those barriers and giving people the opportunity to look out for their colleagues. So that's so key to what we do.
That's amazing. And, you know, I'm sure we'll speak again.
I hope so, and we can meet up for a coffee.
We will.
Fantastic.
Cheers. Thank you
So much. Thank you.